Neat Nation, welcome back to the Droopy Whiskey Show, where today we're tackling a topic that it's quite frankly, it's been too long. I should have tackled this topic before. I should have talked about this whiskey. Well, I talk about it a lot on our live streams, but I could have done it justice with one of these videos talking about the deal, asking the question, what's the deal with Russell's Reserve from Wild Turkey? This guy. It's a solid looking bottle. It's a very bourbon-y bottle. It's kind of no nonsense. It's got a lot of information on there. But it just, you pick it up and you feel like, yes, I'm about to have a bourbon, dang it. And you are. You're about to have a fantastic bourbon. You know what? I've been sipping. Before we get into this, I guess I'll talk a little bit about what I'm sipping. Not Russell's Reserve, but a good warm-up. It's a Knob Creek pick from Timers and Racine. I've had two of this particular pick, and gosh, guys, they may still have some there. This is one of those that's only 9 years old, but to me, this is what Booker's should be. I'm not a big Booker's guy. I wish I liked Booker's more. I don't. It's fine, but I love me some Knob Creek picks, and this is a really, really good one. And I feel like it's a good palate prep to dive into Russell's Reserve. So today, I'm going to answer the question, what's the deal with Russell's Reserve? And then at the end, I'm going to do a little tasting of this barrel pick from Total Wine. So Total Wine is what it is. They're fine. Pretty decent selection. Their barrel picks are hit or miss. This one is a hit. And it's the second bottle of this I've had. I don't have an open bottle of Rare Breed, though, or Russell's Reserve right now. So I'm going to open this single barrel pick again in just a minute. But then I'll do a tasting at the end of the episode. Cool? Great. Now's the time where we talk business. If you guys want more content, go down in the show notes where I have more content right below this video, right below the title of the video. While you're on your way down there, please smash the thumbs up button. That's good for me, good for you, because it's good for me. It helps me make stuff for you to watch, which is cool. And if you want to support the channel in any way, whether that's buying dank swag or joining our Patreon group to get single barrel picks, we'll do a few a year. Those links are also down there. Now let's get into Russell's Reserve. I love doing fresh bottle pops on the channel. It's a remarkable audiovisual experience, shall we? Decent. I mean, a little deep, and I like that, but not poppy enough. Like a nice deep pop is ideal. And they use real cork, and those often lend themselves to the best bottle pop. Not generally great for the quality of the whiskey, but today's is so-so. So Russell's Reserve, what is it? Well, I mentioned it's Wild Turkey. And when it comes to mash bill, it's fairly easy to talk about because Wild Turkey only has one bourbon mash bill. That's 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. It's a mid-rye. I mean, kind of feels like low rye, but given Beam and Heaven Hill, I mean, it's not low rye. We're not talking about a single-digit amount of rye here. So, that said, Russell's Reserve is not only a bourbon. It is a bourbon, for sure, and we're going to get into that a little bit more, but it is also a rye. There's a Russell's Reserve rye that came well after the initial launch of Russell's Reserve Bourbon, and it's kind of a Kentucky rye mash bill. It's barely legal. It's 51% rye, 37% corn, 12% malted barley. So it's barely legal. It's just enough rye to be considered a rye whiskey. That's 51%. Now, the nice thing about rye whiskeys, or these barely legal 51% rye whiskeys with a lot of corn, is they tend to have a decent amount of sweetness with them. But they can also kind of taste like bourbon. That said, Russell's Reserve rye tastes nothing like Russell's Reserve bourbon, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a step back. Let's go back to the founding of Russell's Reserve bourbon in a bottle that looked like this, but had a different label. Russell's Reserve used to have this like very thin brown label, was a little homely, which is not unusual for old-timey bourbon products. And this whiskey had launched in 2001. It was the creation of Eddie Russell, Jimmy's son, part of the two-man Russell team, friggin' legends. something Eddie created as a 10-year-old 101 proof product, which I think is pretty rad, that it was initially created at 101 proof. Homage to the Wild Turkey 101, the classic, the OG. No deviation from that by old Eddie. That is until a few years later, specifically in 2005, when Russell's Reserve went from a 10-year 101 proof to a 10-year 90 proof. Why? I'm not sure. Particularly at this time, like this Wild Turkey's raising their barrel entry proof. So hopefully they have more whiskey at a higher proof on hand than they did previously. But so it started in 2001, 101 proof, 10-year bourbon. Pretty awesome. A nice addition to the Wild Turkey product line, providing a slightly different profile from a Wild Turkey 101 or a Kentucky Spirit even. It's like semi-premium, certainly not ultra-premium, though some of the taste profiles and some of these single barrels certainly lend themselves to the ultra-premium category. If we're just going on taste, it's still pretty decent value. Like we're talking about the 10-year-old 101 proof or 90 proof editions, like not expensive whiskeys. We're talking 30, 35, 40 bucks depending on where and when you get them. I've seen them on sale for like $25, the 90 proof 10-year-old edition that exists today. That's a killer value. I mean, $30-ish for a 10-year 90 proof bourbon. Like, does that remind you of anything? Does that sound familiar? There's whiskey that we love that we can't get 10-year 90 proof. But there's a fantastic substitute, not in flavor profile, because it's very different from Eagle Rare, but the 10-year edition of Russell's Reserve today at 90 proof, 10 years old, $30. The value is better than, I think, what you're getting with Eagle Rare now, that you can't find that for less than 45 or whatever. And it's kind of hard AF to find. Now, as is fairly typical with Wild Turkey products, they tend to go left on the shelf. Never garnered a whole lot of hoopla from bourbon geeks, but as time goes by we start to see evolution within the Russell's Reserve brand. We get into 2007, and that's when we see the first advent of Russell's Reserve Rye, a 6-year-old rye. That too made its appearance at 90 proof initially, so low proof rye, 6 years old, that's fine, and I've always been it's fine on Russell's Reserve Rye. Like, it's nothing to write home about. It's kind of lemony, kind of herbaceous, sweet, good. I mean, it's good, don't get me wrong, but I'm not, like, absolutely... Like, I haven't bought a bottle in a really long time. But I would not be upset if somebody gave me one. I would drink it for sure. So now we've gone from 2001 into 2007, all the way up until 2013. We don't see a massive amount of innovation, but what we do end up seeing in 2013 is the launch of the Russell's Reserve Single Barrel. And here's where things start to get, well, fun and delicious. Because, to me, this Single Barrel edition, this non-chill filtered 110 proof single barrel, not age stated, but generally 8 to 10 years old. Oh my gosh, it is delicious. It's fantastic. And it is an amazeballs value at 50 to 60 bucks. Like, I don't know why we're not hunting this whiskey. Well, partially because it's been on the shelf since 2013. Like, standard single barrels, not even store picks. Since 2013, you could just go get them. And what's also amazing is, I mentioned, the non-chill filtered 110 proof. So we have this 8 to 10-year-old whiskey that's 110 proof. This non-chill filtered. These are things that all lend themselves to amazing bourbon flavors. They get dropped on the shelf in 2013, and they're still on the shelf. Like, you can still just go get one at the grocery store. And in today's climate, where bourbon is, like, we're manically, frantically searching for fantastic, well-aged, well-proofed, fully flavored bourbons, like getting a Four Roses single barrel, which is often around 110 proof, around 9 or 10 years old, non-chill filtered. Four Roses, those sell out very, very quickly. Like, that is what bourbon geeks are after. Well, that exists in a slightly different flavor profile, but equally delicious, I dare say. depending on your preferences. You could say equally delicious in these Russell's Reserve single barrels. Why are they going unnoticed? I don't know. I don't know. Well, for me, it took me until this year to actually fall in love with Wild Turkey. And I think it may just be a brand allure thing. Like Wild Turkey against Buffalo Trace. I'm not sure. I don't know where it all comes from. Like why Wild Turkey continually gets snubbed by collectors or flippers or whatever. But not by me. No longer. I'll sing its praises for sure. Because it's fantastic. It's wonderful. So in 2013, we're all blessed. We're blessed with the launch of the Russell's Reserve Single Barrel. And in 2015, we then see the launch of Single Barrel Rye, which is also not age-stated, slightly lower proof, 104 proof Single Barrel Rye. I think it's a good step above the standard Russell's Reserve Rye, but I think the Russell's Reserve Bourbon is just way better than the Rye. And I think the same about Rare Breed Bourbon from Wild Turkey, barrel proof Wild Turkey, significantly better than Rare Breed Rye. That's just me though. You make your own decision. Again, both are very, very good. 2015 is where we start to see the Russells get really, really playful with this brand as well. We see the launch of some ultra premium products underneath the Russell's Reserve brand, starting with Russell's Reserve 1998 vintage, which is pretty cool. Like, I love when bourbon distilleries start doing vintage releases. Like, it's fun to put an age statement on there, 16 years old, ish, 17-ish. They look like this. This is the last one that was done last year, the 2003 vintage, but it comes in a killer wooden box, a la Booker's. And then the barrel is delightful, or the bottle, not the barrel. It's a delightfully aesthetic bottle. What I do hate about these releases is this dinky little stopper they put at the top. That's just stupid and seems like a design flaw. Good thing I'm going to drink this. Another thing I'd say is while the labels are very, very beautiful, they're also kind of tacky. I was expecting something a little bit more like an actual metal thing on there, given that this is very expensive whiskey. But it's metallic, and generally, I'm not going to complain. Again, it's not for looking at, it's for drinking. I mean, it's for a little look. I'm not going to hate on people who just look at this, because I obviously haven't opened it yet, but I will. I fully intend to. Anyway, this particular edition came out in 2020. It was the third release in the vintage series. We had 1998, we had 2002, and then we finished with 2003. 2003 kind of being the last of the super low barrel entry proof, 107 proof, that seems like it's going to be released at 16 years old. But this one was interesting. A barrel proof whiskey at 89.5 proof. Barrel proof at sub 90 proof. Now I'm here for that, because that reminds me of some dusty whiskeys. I've had some fantastic oaky, flavorful, delightful bourbons at sub 90 proof that were from years gone by. Of course, I haven't had bottles, I've had tastes, but I'm really looking forward to getting into this one and seeing if there's any reminiscence to that. So this vintage series is the launch, the trajectory setting, this probably the first Russell's Reserve products that got we gotta go get it. Then this year, 2001, early in 2001, there was the announcement of Russell's Reserve 13. Now, I already know that I just showed these two bottles and I'm going to get some flack from people who are like, open your bottles. Well, I tasted this one at a bar not too long ago, and I didn't get it that long ago. So I'm going to open it and just cool your jets. Jeepers. Get ahead of this one. Anyway, Russell's 13 announced early in 2021 and is pretty rad. So this one's priced well below the vintage series. That said, 13 years old that's a great age for a bourbon. To me, that we're in money zone. I'm loving stuff that's 12 to 15 years old generally. It's got a lot of barrel character. Still possesses a lot of sweetness though, and some of the uniqueness from the original distillate. This one coming in barrel proof, 57.4% alcohol by volume, everything about this whiskey is just perfect to me. Perfect age statement, perfect proof level, and then perfect distillate, because I have fallen in love with Wild Turkey, and I love these Wild Turkey Russell's Reserve single barrels. So if it tastes ish like this, but is older and at a good price point, $80 is what I paid for this one, your money, you're good, you're great. Now that said, everybody else had the same idea I had, that this was probably going to be amazing, and it seemed like it was amazing. I tasted it, was amazing, and it was very, very hard to get. So I only had a shot at one bottle. I was eager to get the bottle. I definitely got the bottle. Like, I wasn't saying no to it, and I'm really thankful for the store that hooked me up with it, for sure. Thanks, guys. Now I think Russell's Reserve is starting to get the respect it deserves, mainly because the quality of their super premium stuff, and that bourbon geeks have come to seek after those things. That said, this particular single barrel from Total Wine, which I think was fantastic, was on the shelf for months. It may still be there. I might still be able to go get more of this, and it was delightful. Like, I really loved it, and just in case you want to go get one at Total Wine in the Milwaukee area, see if they're still there. It's barrel 20-0104. Distilled 11/21/2011 and dumped February 10th, 2021. It's only a 9-year product, but man, it's pretty good. It's so good. It is the perfect everyday bourbon. It's dynamic, it's got layers, it's got flavors for days, and it fully encapsulates the deal with Russell's Reserve bourbon. It's fully flavored, great mouthfeel, 110 proof, non-chill filtered, 10-ish year old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey from the Wild Turkey Distillery. And it gets the full Droopy Whiskey stamp of approval. If you're watching this and you haven't bought a bottle of Russell's Reserve, specifically the Russell's Reserve single barrel, get off your couch, your laurels, your bed, whatever your butt is resting on, and go get one now. I'm telling you, I'm not being paid to say that. This is not sponsored by Russell's Reserve. This is me being generous with information. And the people who, like me, love Russell's Reserve, they're also cussing at me right now because they're like, dude, it's our secret. Don't tell people. But you know what? I believe in sharing, and I believe in the fact that there's always more good whiskey. So I would hate to keep this from you. Go get some Russell's Reserve. Thank me later. Now let's taste this sucker. To do a good job with this, we're going dainty tasting glass. Gonna extract all the mojo out of this that we possibly can. 110 proof. It's not super high. Highly drinkable. This is a crushable whiskey for sure. Now it's going to be close to barrel proof. That's one thing I didn't mention. But because Wild Turkey's entry proofs are still lower than like a Buffalo Trace or Heaven Hill, something coming out at 110 proof is pretty darn close to the max you're going to see from a Wild Turkey barrel proof product. So there's not much dilution here whatsoever. And that certainly carries through in the overall experience. The nose on this one is like, it's vanilla, but then it's root beer. So you get this kind of mix of spices, but creamy spices and sweetness. I mean, root beer is a great call out for this one for sure. But then you get cashew butter. There's some nuttiness. There's almost always nuttiness that shows up in turkey. Nothing too much on the herbaceous side. Maybe a smidge earthy. I would say that's not unusual for turkey either. People would describe a lot of turkey products as kind of having a funk. So I would call that a blend of earthiness and nuttiness, but it's never massive. Like the whiskey that it's most pronounced in is the Wild Turkey 101. Everything else it seems to dial down as it spends a little bit more time in the barrel. Kind of comes down a little bit. A little more palatable. The creaminess I anticipate on the nose explodes on the palate. I would say explodes. Creaminess doesn't really explode. I mean, it feels going back into the palate the way that like Southern vernacular kind of comes out. It's kind of slow, smooth, slow and smooth. Barrel character is evident. Nice sweet oak with some burnt caramel, touch of cinnamon, kind of big brown sugar, a little bit of PSL with some pumpkin spice. And yeah, cola. So I mean, if you just wanted to say root beer on the palate as well, you wouldn't be wrong. Probably gonna go to the store tomorrow because I'm gonna be by Total Wine, and I'm gonna see if they have one more of these. I've only had one bottle at a time. I don't have a backup right now. This is the only bottle of the standard Russell's Reserve I have, and I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice. Almost tastes better with each sip I take. Alright, I won't hold you any longer. Hopefully you're convinced. You should be convinced that Russell's Reserve is the bee's knees, the bomb. It's a bomb. It bats way above its price point. If the folks over at Wild Turkey are playing with a chip on their shoulder, I hope they continue to do so, because they make great whiskey. For whatever reason, with whatever kind of attitude, I'm all in. And heck, I think having Matthew McConaughey as their spokesperson, not a bad move. I mean, I'm Team McConaughey. It's kind of a goober, but I kind of like that. Y'all, I hope you enjoyed today's show. Lots more to come from the Droopy Whiskey Show. Per usual, you get probably one of these videos a week of me talking, breaking down a brand, sharing some stuff, telling you what I know. And then Thursday night live streams are awesome. Tons of fun. Those are at 8 Central Time here on the YouTube channel. I have Brian Bikey over from the Abandoned Bourbon channel. He is the OG reviewer. Not really the OG because he got in late, but he's fantastic. He's a wonderful whiskey reviewer, so I highly recommend you check out his channel. I got a link to his channel down in the show notes below. Go follow him. He comes on Thursday nights, and then we have guests periodically from time to time. It's just a ball of fun as we break down what's new in whiskey, do some tastings, talk about some topics, and crush some high noons, for sure. Hope to see you all there. Till then, you know the drill. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep it neat. Especially if you're drinking Russell's Reserve Single Barrel. Don't add stuff to this. It's so good.